Welcome everybody. Tim Edwards calling in from Dallas. Thanks for stopping in. We're going to have a really quick training today. Really important stuff, and just so you guys know kind of the drill for what I plan to do here with this High Skill Academy. There's a lot of technique being taught out there, and it's good stuff. It's got some value, but just know that there's a million little things that make up a top leader, and it's all about really compressing time, doing the right things, having the right mindset, leading in the right ways, and instructing your team on how to do that, because not everybody has the same issues, but just know the things that we cover that are not your issues, most of your team will have them. And if you don't know them and you can't address them and you can't coach them on them, you don't get duplication. And without duplication, you don't make big money. But just know these trainings are really important to really understand the ins and outs of how everything works, from the mental standpoint, the marketing standpoint, the coaching. Everything is important. And just like with a championship team, every part of the team has to be spot on, or you can't win a championship. So we're going to start today with a little bit about time, because time is everybody has 24 hours in a day, and it's one of those things that, the people who are super successful manage it really, really well, and the people who aren't, unfortunately, don't understand how to manage it, and they kind of squander it. And so you can't ever get ahead unless you understand how to control it. So if you're too busy, if you've never, seemed to sponsor enough people, if you're exhausted from pushing, and you just don't have any idea how to really pace yourself, if you're no energy, you've got burnout, and a lot of times we face things like guilt, right? Like, I'm not being a good mom, I'm not being a good dad, I'm not being a good wife or husband, I'm trying to build a business, taken away from this and that, and then if you do your business, you're taken away from your family. If you're dealing with your family and spending time with them, you're taken away from your business. You go back and forth, and it just becomes a nightmare unless you know how to really manage it. And it's all about psychology and understanding how to structure yourself, your day, and how to think, and then you can control it. So here's how you make everything work. Now, 90% of the reps start part-time, and that's just the way it is, and everybody else has to do things to put, groceries on the table, and that's cool. But the difference between part-time, though, and spare time is this. Part-time is scheduled like any real business, right? You schedule, like if you had a part-time job, you would schedule it, right? You'd know exactly when you have to be there, and you'd be there. If you've got a part-time business, you have to schedule it, just like any real business or any real job. Spare time is a hobby, right? You just do it whenever you have time, and what happens if you just do it in your spare time, you don't schedule it, and it's not a priority, right? It doesn't get done. So the first thing you have to do is put your business in a scheduled time every day. Now, many try to achieve their dreams and goals, in their spare time, and they have this, I want to get this and make $10,000 a month and have that, and so they've got these big goals, but they don't have any scheduled time. Makes no sense, right? Okay, so this is new. It's outside your comfort zone, right? And so as you start to do the business, a little voice says, you don't have time. You're not doing your job. You're, like we talked about before, you're not being a good mother or father. The house is a mess. The yard is neglected. So because you're uncomfortable when you're doing the business, you sell yourself a bill of goods saying you're a bad mom or dad or whatever, right? So you work on that instead of facing your comfort zone and doing your business. You'll always default to the things that are less painful, right, and are more comfortable. And you have to really understand that so that you can get some leverage on yourself to actually do your business. Now here's proof it's your comfort zone. And a lot of people don't really, they say, oh, no, I really am busy. I got all this and that. Yeah, well, here's the proof. If you could work any job you've ever had an extra hour a day and then retire in 3 to 5 years with more income than you've ever had, would you do it? I have never had anybody say no to that. Never, right? So when you say you do a job an extra hour a day, which means you would prioritize that time, because it wouldn't matter if it's uncomfortable or not. You'd just prioritize it, right? You'd make it work. You'd fit it in. This shows you it's not about the time. It's not about the hour. It's about being uncomfortable, right? So you have to learn that psychology and know how your own mind works. Now, you've heard me say this before, you want to read your why. If you've got a rock-solid why that's really defined why you're doing this business, it usually gives you a lot of leverage mentally so that you can stay on track, because it's so important and there's so much pain if you don't get that why, that you have leverage on your mind and you can typically do things that are uncomfortable for you. So if you don't know what that why is, and you want to know a little bit more about some of the trainings I've got on that subject, just hit me up with a message afterwards, and I'll give you my YouTube channel. So anytime I refer to any training of mine and any other training that you're listening to, if you want that specific training, just get my YouTube channel and you can actually go get it, because some people will be listening to this 3 trainings in, 30 trainings in, whatever it is. So get that in, and you can find that subject, right? So now, I mentioned these things, because you've got to know how to build your business. You've got to know how to get to the top, and all this stuff is about learning how to think like a leader and having successful patterns and successful processes that you use, because it's really about doing that over and over and over and being consistent. It's just like athletics. It's down to fundamentals that you execute over and over and over and over and over. That's why, I remember a story about John Wooden, a basketball coach way back in the day. He won like 11 championships in a row, but he was relentless. I mean, he made people do layups like 100 a day, and he would do the little things that when it comes down to the 1 second and you've got to make it, his team was prepared, right? They had practiced it so much that they just made it more often than everybody else. So it's really about fundamentals. So here's what you do. If you have a spouse or a family, right, you need to first attempt to get them on board with you. This is another thing that I don't hear anybody teaching, right? And it's so key, because we all know that sometimes you have a negative spouse or a negative significant other, right? Or if you're a single parent, you've got kids, right? And you have to get them on board, right, with what you're doing and why you're doing it. If it's a negative spouse or partner, you've got to at least come to some type of neutral agreement, so they're not trying to pull you consistently out of the business, dragging you down, complaining about this. If you got somebody harping on you all the time and it just kills your mindset when you're trying to overcome these issues, you can't do the business, right? So you need to meet and discuss the situation, right? I sat down and told my family, I said, look, I'm killing myself in my business, right? We don't have any time to spend together, right? We don't have all the things that we want. And so I told him this is about when Dad takes the extra time to work, it's so that we can have more time together. We can have all day together later. We can have the things that we want. I can get rid of this business that's killing me. And if you have little kids, right, especially, right, they don't understand when mom or dad has to go work, right? And so it's sort of you don't want, in your mind, you're thinking, well, if I take time away from them, they're going to think I don't love them, right? So you have to sit down and talk to them, And when I first started, my daughter was, I think she was 4.5 at the time, maybe 5. But Britt, I sat down and I said, here's what Dad has to do. Just know when I'm on the phone, because back in that day, there was no Facebook. When I'm doing this, it's for us. It's so I can spend all day with you later versus a little bit of time now. So it's about me wanting to spend more time with you. So that's why I'm going to do it. And I want to know from you, when Dad gets all that time and we're successful, what do you want to do? And she said, well, I want to go to Disney World every month. Right, and so she was excited about that, and so then she knew when Dad had to go spend time on the phone or shut the door or do the business or whatever, she knew that it was, I would kiss her and tell her what I'm going to go do, and it would be about, she would know that it's for her too, right? I'm doing it because I love her and I want to spend time with the family, and it's not about taking time away from her or that my business is more important than she is. So it's really important to sit down with your family and explain the situation so everybody can kind of get on the same page. Now, here's the stuff that works on your head, and I need to be, you'll say things like, I need to be at every game, right? If you've got kids in athletics or dance or whatever, right? And if you have these discussions with your family, and the kids know that that you've got to take some time away, or if you've got a spouse, you alternate, right? Go to every other one, or every third one, whatever it may be, right? And that's because so you can have a better life. So they will understand it's for them, and it's going to be for spending more time with them later. So we decided, as I said, in our family to alternate games. Just know that clarity is king. You have to understand your mind and the mind of your team. If you don't have some of these things and issues, that's great, but almost everybody on your team does. So again, if you want your business to duplicate, you've got to address this stuff. You've got to teach this stuff. Because if you don't pass this kind of stuff on, your team gets stuck there, right? So you've got to be able to get inside their head and understand them and their family. Okay, if you don't have your team listen to the trainings, it's just going to be a mental mess, right? And there's no shot to duplicate. Okay, people will always default to the guilt and not address their comfort zone. They'll always default to what makes them feel guilty and do something like spend time with their family, go to a game, hang out with the kids or whatever, because it's more comfortable, right? They don't want to address the uncomfortable feeling of getting outside and talking to people that you don't know, and the possibility of somebody saying no. It's rejection doesn't make you bleed. Right, just know that it's a lot more difficult to think about rejection than it is to actually face it. It's really no big deal once somebody says they're not interested. Do you really care? I mean, most people don't. So it's really just about just doing it. It's way easier to do it than to think about doing it. And here's the reality. Do you remember the old commercial that showed the mechanic, right? And this is going to date me, right? So some of you young guys won't remember this, but they had a commercial with a mechanic, and there was a car up on the lift in the background, right, where they work on the cars. They have to pull the engine, that kind of stuff, right? And basically it showed the engine out on the ground beside it, and it showed him, and he said, you can pay me now or you can pay me later, and he holds up an oil can. And so the message there was, if you had changed your oil on a regular basis, spent a little time, a little bit of money, a little bit of maintenance, right, over time, you wouldn't have needed the engine pulled out and overhauled. So you can pay a little bit now, or you can pay huge later, okay? Just know that the business is exactly the same, right? Because here's what happens, right? You start talking about, well, I can't miss the games, I can't miss this, I can't miss that, I got to spend time. Well, here's what happens later, right? Because you're not paying a little bit of time and investing in your business now. Later, when those kids need their first car, need their college, need their wedding, need help started with their first house, need help with their first business, and they want to spend time with you then, because you haven't put time in your business today and got leveraged income. Now you got face telling them no. I can't afford the car. We really can't send you to college. I'm sorry you want that wedding, in that place, but we can't afford it. And I can't help you get that first house. You're going to have to rent forever. I can't help you get a start in your business because I didn't pay the price before in my business, right? So this comes back to be the engine and the overhaul, and it's big, And don't think this doesn't happen, because I've watched this kind of stuff happen for years. I've been in the business 23 years, so I have the advantage of seeing back, watching people make mistakes for 10 years, and God forbid there's an illness, right? What if something happens in your family and people get sick, and you have to work instead of being there, right, to support them? I remember the story. One of my mentors, Richard Gall, he talked about his wife getting cancer, and they had stuff that she had something that was inoperable, right? And so they had to actually fly her to another country and put her in a hospital, where it was an experimental type thing. And he said, I sat there with her every single day, right, day in and day out. I didn't have to worry about my business. I didn't have to worry about money, right? The business went on with or without me. The business grew. People were building their own dreams, and I had an income. I didn't have a boss screaming at me. He said we had people that were CEOs of huge companies, oil companies and things like that, and they were having to leave their loved ones. They could afford to come there and get the treatment, but they couldn't stay, or they'd lose their job. And he said, you can't imagine what that's like, when you can do that. And I can tell you, if you don't pay the price today, some of these things are going to come back later, and it's going to be big. So just be prepared. Now, I've seen it, and again, like I said, if you don't focus on it, the consequences later, are big. And if you ask my daughter Britt, about me skipping a few things in the early years, she won't remember that I wasn't at that particular thing instead of that. Her mom was there or whatever. She doesn't remember that. All she remembers now, because she started at 4 or 5. She was 4 or 5 when I started. She remembers Dad being home all day, every day, for her entire life, right? And she had a life that most people dream of. That's all she remembers now. She doesn't remember that I missed, a dance recital here or there in the early days, because I paid the price and got the business built so I could do what I wanted to later. Now, here's how you schedule your day. 80% of your time is connecting with new people. Okay, if you're on the West Coast, you can start at 6:30 a.m. and people, it's 9:30 a.m. on the East Coast. right? So you can get some time in before work if you're part-time. If you're on the East Coast, you can start at 9 p.m. after the kids are in bed. It's only 6:30 p.m. on the West Coast. So use the time zones, and especially now with Facebook, guys, it's just a dream. Man, there's so many people internationally that are on 24 hours a day. And in the old days, we could only prospect locally, right? You couldn't call somebody long distance in another country, and if you did, you didn't know if they were busy or not, right? You had to just cold call or call people. It was incredibly expensive. It was so restrictive because there was not a lot of time zones, and you didn't know who was up or anything, right? With Facebook, you can get on, you can see exactly who's up. If you're up at 6 o'clock in the morning, you can see people up, right? If you're up at 10 o'clock at night, you can see them online. So use these time windows as an advantage. Either get up a little early or stay up a little late, right, and work the time zones in your favor, because there's always people up in other time zones, so you can actually work it. Now here's what you do. 80% of, let's say you have an hour a day, right? That's a pretty typical start for a part-time person. 80% of that hour is 48 minutes, 5 days a week. Block it out. You've heard me on the trainings before. Don't randomly scroll through people's pages. Be connecting with people, and you got to guard your time. You got to block out time to connect with people. Now, here's what most people do when they get up. They check their email, they check the Facebook, they text a little bit, they chat a little bit with a rep, then they chat with a coach for a while. Whoops, hour's gone. I'll prospect tomorrow, right? This is your comfort zone. If you do this, you will fail. Okay, if you start with 1 hour, here's what I do. I prioritize follow-ups first. What does that mean, right? If you're spending time talking to people, right, connecting with people, when you get up, if someone says, hey, I looked at that video, or hey, I want to talk, that is the most important thing. An interested person somewhere in the process has to take priority because they've already gone through some of the steps, right? So don't just jump up, and try to go connect with new people when you got people waiting that have already been connected with, right, that are further in the process, that want that next step. Right, so do your follow-ups and work with the people who are interested first, then connect with your new people. That's the second thing, right? So you get your numbers in, keep your pipeline full, then do everything else. Don't spend all your time chatting with people. I'm not saying be rude to people, but if you spend all your time just chatting with anybody and everybody that wants to chat, as soon as you jump on and then all of a sudden your hour's gone, you're not going to build your business, right? So everybody has to take responsibility for their time and understand that everybody else has time restraints as well, right? So you must create successful habits and patterns, and this is what I'm teaching you to do. If you don't follow these things, you're just going to squander time. You're going to look up, the day's gone, the week's gone, the month's gone, 2 years have gone by, and you're not where you want to be. You got to focus on the detail from day one. Stay plugged in, right? Now this is another thing that you have to manage your time with, and that's why I keep my trainings to 15 to 25 minutes. I can't believe some of the people out in the industry, some of the quote-unquote top leaders and gurus. They have totally lost touch with the average person. They forget what it's like to be strapped for time, and they want you on every hangout, every night, and they spend an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. If somebody has 6 hours a week, you have no time to work your business. You're always plugged in. That's comfortable. Oh, it's always exciting, yeah, but you have no time to prospect, right? Okay, you want your leaders to see you and hear you on these events. Pipe up. Say hi. When I got on a while ago, if you're a leader on my team and you didn't say hi, shame on you. Your people are listening to see if you're there. And you want leaders to hear you, you want your team to hear you. Same thing on a hangout. If you're not doing comments and showing that you're there, interacting with people, having fun, making sure your upline sees you and your downline sees you, shame on you, right? Because you're not leading by example. Rising tides raise all ships. Numbers create energy. Be present, show up, be consistent. But again, if you're going to become a leader, keep your training short so your people have time to do the business, okay? Because if you don't get plugged in and stay plugged in, your people won't either. And if you're plugged in, just like right now, when you leave this call, you will be on cloud 9. You're going to have the mindset like crazy, right? You can have some fundamentals that make you better. It's your mindset. If you unplug and you don't consistently get on trainings, you will fail. And your people will see that you're not on. They won't plug in either. They'll fail. Okay, master consistency. Get ahead of your week. Here's another huge psychological advantage that a lot of people never train on it. And a lot of people haven't thought about it, right? But here's your goal. Your goal should be 10 people per day, 5 days a week, that you connect with new people, right? You're always connecting with new people, chatting with people. See if anybody's open, right? Because a lot of people are out also chatting too and prospecting. So you want to get in a conversation with about 10 people a day and just chat with them and connect with them and see if they're open. Now, here's a normal bad plan. Okay, you talk to 10 people. Your goal is 10 people a day, right? Okay, so you start on Monday. Your goal is to talk to 10 Monday, 10 Tuesday. Then something happens on Wednesday. You talk to 0. Okay, you talk to 10 Thursday. Now you get 30 of your 50 needed, right? Friday, the phone goes out, internet problems, 0. So what happens here, because you start, it's kind of like being prompt and on time. If you're always late, I can tell you, you're going to have problems building your business, because business people want punctuality. They want you to be prompt. You're never going to be organized in your time if you're always late. And if you always start your week at the time everybody else starts, which is a little late, I'm going to show you how to get ahead of that, right? Then things happen. Things always pop up, and if you aren't ahead and things pop up, you get behind, right? So you have to plan for things and make sure that you're not behind. So if you've got 30 of your 50 in because you didn't have time on Wednesday and your internet went out on Friday, okay, if you've only got 3 of your 5 days in at 10 contacts per day, you're 40% short that week, right? Oh, I'll catch up next week, right? Then you're depressed. Then you beat yourself up, right? I'm not getting it done. I'm this, all that self-talk because you're behind, because you didn't plan, because you didn't organize yourself. You feel like a failure, right? And what happens then? Then your mentor, right? Oh, they're not getting it done. They're not committed. So just know that people are watching you, right? You're on their radar or you're not, and you want to be on your mentor's radar. You want to be getting it done. You want to have a good mindset. You want to keep your contacts up. You want to bring them people on a regular basis. If you don't, they're not going to think you're committed, and they're going to want to focus somewhere else. Okay, and what happens when people have these bad habits, they repeat them over and over for months or years. Does this sound fun, right? Is this a plan to create a great mindset and the energy you want to attract other people? If you do this, guys, you're not going to attract a team in a million years. You're just not. It's all about energy, your focus, your passion, you being on task, on point, being visible, showing up on the events, getting your numbers in, bringing people to your mentor so you can sponsor people. If you're not doing that, you're not going to lead a team, and it's about leading a team, becoming a leader. Okay, a smart leader, here's what they do. They do 20 contacts on Saturday or Sunday, right? Everybody's got some extra time on the weekends usually, right? Get 20 done on that first day, right? Then you get 10 on Monday, let's say, and 10 on Tuesday. Now you have 40 of your 50 done, and it's only Tuesday, right? Same internet issue goes out on Wednesday, no big deal, right? You do your 10 on your Thursday, you're done. Friday is a non-issue because you have finished early, right? What does that do to your mindset? Right? Now do more, right? If you want to get more contacts in, get ahead of it. You get a bigger pipeline. You've got great energy. You attract other people because your mindset is different when you're ahead. When you're ahead, you have a different energy about you, right? You reach your goal. You report that to your coach. Your mentor's proud. Coach compliments you. Being a leader, right? Which helps boast your confidence. It shows other people that you're getting it done, so they want to step up and follow you. Right? And then let's say, especially in a program, if they're stacking reps or than a binary or something, your coaches put people under you, or more excited about helping you build the business, right? So this is a mindset it's a business mindset, and you got to learn. This is the psychology of success. It's about thinking correctly, like a leader, and then you duplicate that. Everyone teaches technique today. I can tell you that's not the key. If you don't have a great mindset and understand the psychology, get ahead of your week and teach your team those things, they can use the proper technique all day long, do the right post all day long. They're going to squander time. They're not going to have any production. They're not going to grow their business, and it's not going to work.